So welcome to another video from theplayersaid.com. My name's Alexander.
And I'm Grant.
Today we're here with John Lapham, who is, we're here at Buckeye Game Fest 2024. And we just sat down, we played a full game of his future design, upcoming design, that's called A More Perfect Union. This is a card-driven game, a two-player CDG that covers the, let me get this right, the ratification of the Constitution, with or without amendments. So this is a historically themed kind of two-player strategy game where it's about playing your cards for either ops or events to try and influence the different states to see whether or not they will or won't ratify with or without amendments. So one player plays the Federalists and the other plays the Anti-Federalists, which sounds nasty, but all they want is to put some amendments together which become the Bill of Rights.
They like the document, they just want a little more detail.
So there's no bad guys in this one. We're all just trying to make it happen.
We're all Americans working together.
Sometimes at these conventions we do a little demo. We played a full game of this. It was very, very enjoyable, and we just kind of wanted to have a chat with you, John, and kind of sit down and walk us through what some of this is and kind of where this came from and what the brainchild for this is.
Okay, so this is inspired by Twilight Struggle. I loved the tension of your opponent's event triggers, whether you want it to not or not, and I love this topic. So I was a lawyer and a historian, and I love the topic. Read a lot about it.
I was going to say you either are a lawyer or a history teacher. I think that's
both at different times.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah,
because when you sat down and were explaining it to us, I'm like, oh, he's a lawyer or he's a history teacher.
This is no one's special interest.
Yeah. So
not a bad thing. That's a good thing.
Right. Well, it makes it easier to design a game like this if you know something about the topic, right? So that was the thematic interest, and then it was just, can I make it happen?
So. Your love of Twilight Struggle and those kinds of CDGs as well. What other influences outside of Twilight Struggle do you find kind of creeping into this?
That's a good question. I would say the idea of timing was really important to me. I'm trying to think which game had the most impact on me. And of course, in Twilight Struggle, you see those same scoring cards over and over again, and the timing is somewhat structured because some of them only come in the second half of the deck or the third half of the deck. In this game, the timing is really important, and I wanted to make it fun, a fun aspect of the game to sort of control the timing. So you play a card, it doesn't happen right away in this game. You schedule the convention. It goes on a track, and then it slides down. But there are ways to try to accelerate it or delay it. And so that timing aspect, that probably came from somewhere, but I
can't remember where.
I can't really remember where that came from, but that was one of the things that I wanted to try and capture.
Well, and about the timing, I think the convention track was a very neat little way to do that because you still had a moment to put some influence on the board to try to affect that outcome, some last minute politicking and bribing or whatever. The other thing I really liked about the timing was, and you have it on your play aid, but what do we call this? Just the where the cards are going to come.
The seating.
The seating of the deck.
Yeah.
And those are the convention cards that you're going to call these different states to go to that track.
Right.
And it was kind of cool because you're paying attention to that because you're like, oh, I don't need to worry necessarily about Virginia yet. I got to fight for these ones that were earlier, and that kind of helped the pacing and the understanding of that fight.
And this reminded me, sure, of Twilight Struggle, a bit more of 1989, because these are also color-coded, and so it was really easy to assess
make
on
the
the board.
connection.
Hey, the yellow ones, maybe I don't need to commit as hard to those in the early game.
And you did a good job graphically. You know, the boxes are yellow, green, whatever color that is, peach. I agree with that. That helped me.
It was really easy to be like, all right, we're going brown and green first.
Right. And then 1989 also affected me. I liked the little mini game that game introduced to the Twilight Struggle system, but it was a little too time consuming to do it, I found.
It was.
Agreed.
And I wanted to streamline it. So there are a few cards that are potent, but only during a convention. And you're going to see several of them over the course of the game. And what are you going to do with them? This was a challenge I had as well, because if you can't hold cards from turn to turn, those convention cards would only hit once in a while, where you happen to draw it on the turn that the convention is happening. So I created a backroom mechanism, which seems kind of like politics, right? Tricks in the back room,
Yep.
where you can stash cards, and you can play them from there, but only during those conventions. And so it is a way to make uncertainty about the results of any of these conventions. So the way the game works is, once that convention is held, it's scheduled, like you said, and time is going to pass, but you know it will be held eventually.
Yep.
And once it's held, you can maybe pull out a last-minute trick to
Yeah.
sway the impact.
So prepping, I really enjoyed this part
Yeah,
because
it
I
was-
was building a mini deck that I could use to
Yeah.
potentially win some of those, and that was cool. Didn't always work out for me, but it
Yeah.
was still interesting to try to put, like you said, some of those little more powerful cards that I didn't want to play now and never see them again.
Or really specific convention cards that were like, hey, this one's for Pennsylvania. Cool, I'm going to hold them.
Yep.
Pennsylvania's not going to go this turn, but I know
In
when
2 or
when
3
it
turns
comes,
it's gonna go,
boom,
yeah.
let's go.
Right, right.
Yeah, that
And-
was very well done.
Yeah, and I think strangely enough, I think Kingdom of Heaven may have had a little bit of an influence on me. I don't know if you're familiar with that game. but
We
there's-
own the game. We have tried to play it once, but that was many, many years ago, and we failed miserably.
Oh,
but
well-
we're going to give it another try. I still own it.
Well, there's like little siege triggers that you can play the card for a siege effect. I don't remember where it is on the card. It might be on the bottom of the card or on the side of the card. And my initial idea was, well, maybe I could put a little convention effect on the cards in the bottom, and then they would be dual purpose. But I couldn't seem to make that work. And that's how I ended up with it.
I liked this. I thought that was cool.
I think my other favorite part of this was the issues layer and that publishing and distributing mechanic that's kind of been put into this, where yeah, you can spend ops to put cubes out or to remove opponents' cubes, but the publishing might be a bit more specific regionally, but within that it can be more powerful.
Well, you can get ultimately almost 2 for 1 sometimes, depending on what the issue is and what the state is looking for.
But I loved that it was that little bit of extra, like, these guys cared about commerce at this time,
Yeah.
and these guys cared about individual rights, and these guys cared about states' rights. Just those extra little layers of stuff where it's like, it could have just been a generic box, but we added that extra little bit of history and historiosity into it.
Yeah.
That also mechanically was really fun. So you get those publishing cards, and it's like, ooh, do I
Yeah.
use this for the ops, or like I can go really hard on that, or if the adjacency's been broken because some of those conventions have been resolved, it's like, okay, maybe the ops are better on this.
Yeah.
There was a lot of cool decision making in that space.
That reminded me a little bit of 1989 as well.
Yeah.
Those icons for the different, I can't
Right.
remember,
Yes.
themes or whatever they were. You had some similar effects. So that was also very, very cool, but uniquely done, and really historically, you know, what those states were looking for in the Bill of Rights or the Constitution was important. So
Yeah, I definitely tried to create enough diversity in the map so that those were interesting choices.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, and I definitely felt that they were, because, you know, we played a lot of CDGs in this style, and it's one of those things where it's like ops the whole game.
yeah.
But when the event or those publication options are very strong, then I'm incentivized to use them. Then the mechanics actually become useful, and I think some games fall foul of
interesting.
that. And this one really that
well,
stood out as good.
Yeah.
It's an unbelievably rich historical database on these publications. People from this era were very literate, and they wrote a lot. And
Well, the Federalist Papers, right?
Right.
There were hundreds of those written and distributed
yes,
to
and
try to
people-
convince people.
People read them, and that was how they made their choices,
Mm-hmm.
as well as across the table with the little strong arming and
Yeah.
the face-to-face stuff. So yeah, I really wanted those to be important. But originally, I think I was going to have a lot of individual publications that did special things, and it just didn't feel like it was doing enough. And so that's when I came up with the 3 issues that
Yeah.
each publication has a different issue in a different state with different potential reach. So
Well, I think the advantage there is the less specificity based on a state allows it more functionality in the game
Right.
or utility. And that was a couple of the events I was like, oh, that's really good, but it's for Pennsylvania only, and Pennsylvania's already been adjudicated.
You're like,
and
is the adjacency worth it?
Yeah.
But
just
there's
really
great decision
interesting.
points in it.
Yeah, lots of really tough decisions. Felt like a very polished game. I know you've been working on this for, you said 10 years.
Yeah, 10 years.
Did you have
On and
hair
off.
at that
On
point?
and off.
I'm just
More.
More? Yeah.
Yeah.
I had more hair 10 years ago.
The beard might have been less white too. I don't know. Yeah.
But this felt very polished and very, very eminently playable, very interesting and deep. There's a lot of layers to it.
Yes.
I really enjoyed it.
Well, there is that, but the thing that scares me always is how do you balance something like this, right? Because there's so many variables, so many moving parts. I think that's what's always sort of made me wonder: is it working enough? So you just got to test it more, play it more.
And whilst we only played it once, we're very experienced CDG players, and it came down to the last hand.
It did.
And I think that's a credit to a game that can
One
do
or
that.
two cards here or there, and I think the outcome would
Yeah,
have
if
been
I hadn't
slightly
had that
different.
really
Yep.
strong card, it was going to be hairy.
And that's to me a very good sign of a well balanced,
Okay, good.
well
Very glad to hear
tested
that.
game.
Yeah.
So, when can people look to be expecting this, maybe out in the wider world after production?
I'm not totally sure the answer to that. That's a question I'm not prepared to answer. I'm sure that the folks at Catastrophe have a better sense of that at this moment than I do. But I'm thinking next year.
Okay.
Definitely something to look forward to. We love Catastrophe Games. We played a number of their titles.
This is a really good game.
Yeah, once this
for them.
comes
Yep.
to release, this will be another very good arrow kind of in their quiver for sure.
Okay, hopefully that will be sooner rather than later.
So, thank you very much for sitting down and having a chat with us. Thanks for teaching us and allowing us to play this.
Okay, great.
But thank you very much for tuning
you.
in as well. I've been Alexander from PlayersAid.com.
And I'm Grant.